AskReddit. Serious? People of Reddit that honestly believe they have been abducted by aliens. What was your experience like? I wouldn't say I was abducted by aliens specifically, but I was definitely taken somewhere. It was more of an abduction of consciousness, if that makes sense. I don't know. It might have been my body too. It was a weird feeling I can't really explain. I was sitting at the park one day in broad daylight with 4 or 5 friends. I lived in a small community in the Midwest, so the park was empty except for us. We were talking and smoking. Just cigarettes for me. Nothing that would alter my consciousness. When suddenly everyone just kind of slowed down and eventually froze completely. Myself included. I couldn't move or talk. I couldn't blink. I had to focus really hard on just breathing. And then I blacked out. I woke up alone in a dark, nearly pitch black room with 3 large illuminated screens around me. On the screens I saw the park from above, the exact spot where my friends and I were sitting. It felt like I was in that room for hours until I blacked out again. I finally came to and realized I'd been crying hysterically on the ground. The rest of my friends seemed pretty wrecked too, like they all just experienced something equally terrifying. I was the first one of us to speak. I said I think I met God, and they all responded with similar brief statements. I remember one girl saying we're on TV somewhere, which expressed the feeling of being watched, and safe, and violated really well. I can't remember what anyone else said, just the general idea of we just got taken somewhere. We didn't talk about it besides one weird, short sentence each. That was the strangest part for me. That we didn't talk about it, but we all understood that we'd seen the same thing. It felt like we couldn't talk about it where they could see us. We left immediately and haven't spoken about it since. I don't keep in touch with those friends anymore, but it would be interesting to know if they felt like it was an abduction of some kind too. When I was in 6th grade, I woke up one day with 4 very small holes on my upper right thigh. It looked like the skin had been cut out in perfect tiny circles, yet there was no blood. The circles were in a straight line and across my thigh horizontally, no more than 6 inches wide completely. I also felt very tired and couldn't remember what I had dreamt, which is weird for me since I pretty much remember every dream I have every night. I put band-aids on them and went to school as usual. The next morning, I wake up and there are 3 new holes, right above the previous 4. I woke up once again very tired and drowsy, and was now weirded out by how symmetrical everything was that I showed my mom, who said it was most likely ant or spider bites. Next morning, 2 more holes above the previous 3, and the morning after that, 1. This is when I was seriously scared since the holes now formed a triangle that pointed to my knee and they weren't scabbing over. I was so tired and confused and was scared to go to bed. So I stayed up really late but woke up the next morning, not even knowing when I had fallen to sleep, only dark and then morning. When I did wake up, I was suddenly very alert, and when I threw my blanket off my legs I found all the holes completely gone. No scabbing or scarring or any trace of the circles on my thigh. I showed my mom and she just brushed it off as if they had healed like any other cut. I'm honestly not sure if this is related, but I do feel like there is a correlation. After this, I couldn't really comprehend math anymore. I had excelled at math all my life, but after this incident it was like numbers had no meaning to me and I couldn't figure out simple equations. I went to an advanced school and had been learning algebra and geometry and was doing great, but then it was like poof, all my math knowledge and comprehension was gone. To this day I can't even do simple addition problems without double checking them. TLDR, was mostly likely probed. Aliens may have taken my math smarts with them. I was about 8 or 9 and my mom tells me we are going on a day trip to meet a high school friend. Cool. I grabbed my Game Boy Advance because I know my mom's friend has kids my age and wanted to show them up in the racing game I had. I overheard this from my mom talking with her friend at her house. They told me to leave the room because they needed to talk about adult things. Little, innocent, curious me wonders what exactly are adult things that I can't hear? Were they gonna throw some new juicy cuss words out? Well, mom's friend had a little girl who would sleepwalk at night. Started when they moved into their new house, Northern California. It was a suburban area but not too suburban. new neighborhood with a lot of empty homes and forest patches in between each community. She was about 4 years old and they found her one night in the backyard just sitting there. After that incident they decide they need to lock her in her room at night and bar up her windows so that she doesn't end up in the woods nearby or anywhere besides her room really. The story: mom's friend and husband wake up to a loud boom on the side of the house in the middle of the next night. Felt like something hit the house because everything shook. They check on their boys. They are good. They didn't hear anything and go back to sleep. They check on their daughter, unlock the door and realize she isn't in her room. They start to freak out, then hear a knock at the door. They open it. It's the effing sleepwalking 4-year-old daughter. They ask her where she's been and she said with the men and points down the street. Pissed off dad sees 2 guys in coats walking down the street. He yells at them and starts sprinting at them. Mom's friend said coat guys didn't react at all. Coat guys turn the corner, dad turns the corner and they're gone. Mom and dad check the lock and windows. No tampering. They notify the police who pretty much say there's not much they can do but will keep an eye out. Effin' sleepwalking 4-year-old daughter is fine. Isn't scared at all. Just tired and goes back to bed. After that my mom didn't understand why I was scared as hell that night. She believes she was abducted but refuses to tell me what happened. Even my dad tells me that he can't tell me the story. Says it's for my mom to share if she wants it shared. But overhearing this when I wasn't supposed to hear it had me tripped out as a kid. As a kid I lived in a tiny mountain town in central Oregon. We were very poor and instead of having a bedroom I would sleep on a futon in the living room with my younger sisters in our double wide. One night around the age of 10, I was woken up by the room flooded with a bright white light. At first I thought the semi must have overturned on 97 and was shining on the curtains. I decided to get up and see what it was, but to my surprise I wasn't able to move at all, much like sleep paralysis. I tried to yell out to my sisters so they could help me, but just as I couldn't move, I found myself unable to speak. At this point I was in a full-on panic attack. Then one of your stereotypical grey aliens passed through the wall and floated me out through the wall to a flight of the navigation-shaped craft. The intense light that bathed me made it impossible to see. Suddenly an oxygen mask was put over my face and I blacked out as if on a seizure. Some undetermined amount of time passed and my vision started to become unblurred. I was back in my futon, light still filling the room as the alien looked down at me. Using some sort of telepathic communication they said to me, "I'm going to inject this into your neck. It won't hurt, won't leave a mark, and it will make you think this was all a dream." They progressed to inject my neck and then float off through the wall. The light faded away in an upward direction leaving me to stare into the darkness. Slowly my eyes adjusted to the dark, restoring my night vision. Without ever opening my eyes, must have been sleeping with my eyes open, I woke up from this dream, looked over at my sleeping sisters, climbed out of the futon, walked into the kitchen and ate a sweet cherry pepper. I followed that with a glass of water and went back to bed. Today I'm still sure it was just a dream, and I have great dream recall. I don't know if I think this because it keeps me from looking crazy or if it is exactly what the alien in my dream said that the shot would do. In the 90s, my family lived in a coastal city in Saudi Arabia. My parents were doing up the flat we lived in, so my brother and I had to sleep on the same king-sized bed for a week or so. I was probably around 10 years old and my brother was 13 years old. One night my brother started shaking my shoulder trying to wake me up, saying, Armick, do you see this too? I don't know what the time was but it was dark. I was under my duvet and had no idea what he was talking about. I opened my eyes and saw this featureless, lanky, tall person made of dim light. It was standing by my brother's side of the bed. Before I could process what was happening, it extended its neck over to the middle of the bed between my brother and I and disintegrated into tiny lights across the room with a massive static sound. My brother and I screamed and hid under our duvets. Next thing I know, I wake up in the morning at the exact same time as my brother, and we just look at each other and run out of the room. We have talked about this incident a few times over the years and we still don't understand what happened. A mutual shared episode, sleep paralysis monoxide. We had our windows open, The flat was ventilated properly. My parents don't remember hearing any unusual sounds. They slept soundly in their room. I asked my brother when he noticed this thing as he woke me up. He remembers waking up to a glow in the room, opened his eyes and saw this thing of light walk up to his side of the bed and just stand there with a soft humming sound coming out of it. He thought he was dreaming, so he tried to ignore it and turned to his other side. He looked back after a while and it was still there, so he decided to wake me up. No idea what to make of this incident. I'm over 35 years old now. I've had a few incidents over the years that I can't explain, but I'm healthy, so all good. This happened to me when I was 10 years old, in Calgary, Alberta, in 1970. I was walking home from school, cutting across the school sports field. Our house wasn't far. We lived across the street from the school. There wasn't any other kids around, since I had stayed late for a volleyball practice, and the rest of the students had gone home 45 minutes earlier when school let out for the day. It is about 4:30 in the afternoon. Something caught my attention from the corner of my eye, and I stopped and turned to the right to look at it. Floating directly above a house facing schoolyard was a large UFO. I was in the middle of the football field, so this is about 60-70 yards distant from where I stood. The UFO is big and almost touching the roof of the house. It is completely centered on the house, but it is so big, it also is above the house on the left and right. The lots there are 50 feet wide, which puts the UFO at about 150 feet across and perhaps 25-30 feet tall. It is very bright, giving off a harsh white light which is difficult to look at, since it hurts my eyes. I look away back towards my house, and see a car and a motorcycle on the side street which intersects the street with the UFO. That street is about half a block away, and I remember being surprised and confused that the drivers are not reacting to the UFO, which clearly must be visible to them, and so obvious, since it is so bright, but the traffic continues as normal. At that point, I become aware that something is forcing me to turn my head back toward the UFO. I'm turning, and my field of view is changing, but I'm not the one doing it. I struggle to turn away, but I simply can't control any of my body. I remember a feeling of panic. Then the next thing that I can remember, I'm walking into my house. It is about 9:30 at night, and dark outside. I can't recall anything of the last 5 hours. My parents were furious with me for being so late. Apparently, my parents and my 2 brothers had been trying to find me for hours. A voice thought in my head tells me to tell them that I'm not feeling well and I need to go to bed. I have no idea where that voice thought came from, but I do exactly as it suggests and run upstairs to my room and go to bed. The next day, I still can't seem to explain what happened, and my mother is even more angry with me since my new school shoes are ruined, since the tops of them are all scuffed and dirty, like I was dragged face down across the ground with my feet still dragging on the ground. I told my older brothers what happened, and they suggested I keep quiet about it, since nobody would believe me. Good advice, as it turns out, since in the many years since, most of the people I have shared the story with don't really know what to say afterward. Many years later, I was looking at my old school workbooks from that time, and they are full of drawings of UFOs, all of the same design, and with more detail than I can recall from memory. For example, in my memory, I can't remember seeing any windows in the UFO, since the light was too bright to make out details, but in my drawings, there were large round windows all around the UFO, some with faces looking out. Edit. Since several people asked about the drawings, which I don't have, I did a quick Google image search for something pretty close, and found this. The only difference is that I had the height less, and width greater, but this is very similar. This shows the windows as rectangles, but in my drawings they were more oval circular. I'm very sure the UFO I saw was 150 feet wide, exactly the width of 3 50-foot house lots. Thanks for watching. Remember to drop a fat like and subscribe for more sweet content delivered by yours truly. Also, check out some of these other videos below.